Sometimes we have to, even at times like this when we only want to focus on the positive, we have to talk about some of the negative, but with a positive intention. You know, the seventh lesson, in my opinion, out of the 8, is that when there are underlying weaknesses in a community that are left untreated, then in the moment of crisis, unfortunately, those underlying weaknesses become more pronounced, more problematic, and they surface. If there are issues that we did not deal with as a community and we swept it under the carpet, in the moment of crisis, it comes to the fore. And then it cripples us. What we saw, and this was unique to the South African Muslim community, it happened nowhere else in the world, it happened here, is that we inclined towards the sensational, even if it was fake news. Even if it was unsubstantiated. You will struggle to count, even if you have a degree in mathematics, how many WhatsApp muftis and how many WhatsApp doctors graduated in the year 2020. People were passing big fatwas, ordinary people on WhatsApp, on what it means to have tawakkul, on what is contagion, la adwa. Every Tom, Dick and Harry and his cat had an opinion now on the interpretation of that hadith. All of a sudden, WhatsApp doctors, no, it's harmful to wear your mask. You're breathing out carbon dioxide. Really? Why didn't you study 6 years of medication, then pronounce? People were not only circulating, but they were starting to believe that which had no sanad, no chain of narration, no substantiation, no authenticity. You see one clip on the harms of something, you forward it, you believe it, you don't know who the speaker is, you don't know what are his qualifications, you don't know where he graduated, you don't know who produced the clip, you don't know where it's coming from, you don't know where it's going through, but no, we will spread it because it's sensational. It was an underlying problem in our community that became more pronounced during this year 2020. No substance to most of the theories that we were circulating, and not only circulating, but we ourselves were subscribing to it. Not only was there no substantiation or basis, there was no logic. And what was unfortunate was even the educated people started to succumb to this. It's important to have an open mind. I, for one, will say you don't believe everything that the establishment tells you. Because at times they can err, and at times they can have a less than noble objective. So you don't have to take everything hook, line, and sinker which is coming from established sources, be it spiritual, medical, or otherwise. You keep an open mind, but not such an open mind that your brains fall out. That you start degenerating to the illogical. You know, what was shocking, even after things opened up and now you started having functions and events, sometimes you just sit on a table and a person tells you, Maulana, all a big hoax. I say, let's just rather agree. Yeah, it's a big hoax and call it a day. Because the level of debate had degenerated to such a low ebb that you would struggle now to even have a decent, logical, coherent, substantiated, evidence-based discussion with even intelligent people who have qualifications. Think back to some of oh no, if they don't do it in the taxis, why must we do it? Since when has the taxi industry become the benchmark of what is right and what is wrong for us as model South African citizens and Muslims? So must we drive like how they drive? Where's the logic? Oh, no, I don't take no precaution. I make tawakkul. Really? So why you lock your door at night at home? Why you take your insulin for diabetes? Why you take tablets for headache? Where's the logic? In some of what we were speaking, in some of what we were writing, in what we were forwarding, each one of us, including myself, we need to make tawbah to Allah for what we forwarded during this year on WhatsApp. The misinformation, whether it was intentional or inadvertent. Some people became, as I said, WhatsApp muftis. Nothing bad can happen in the masjid. Really? Where was Umar radiallahu anhu assassinated? On the musalla of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Masjid al-Nabawi. Where did the Bedouin urinate? Why you complain about athlete's foot? When people don't dry their feet in the uzukana, nothing bad can happen in the masjid, nothing can spread from the masjid. There was, it was shocking. The low ebb to which the discussion and the debate has degenerated to in our community. We oversimplified issues that were nuanced, and we overcomplicated issues that were simple. We simplified issues that were nuanced, and we overcomplicated issues that were simple. I don't want to go into another discussion about vaccines, but somebody asked me the other day, so Maulana, will you take the vaccine when it comes to South Africa? How will you know whether it's the right thing or the wrong thing? I said, simple, bye. Allah forbid, if I have a heart attack tomorrow, who will I ask whether I must go for a bypass or not? My doctor who I trust. So that same Muslim doctor that I trust with every other aspect of my good health and my medical issues, I will ask that doctor, that is it safe for me to take the vaccine? If he says yes, then yes. Why do we overcomplicate issues unnecessarily? Yes, the ulama will check about the ingredients, and if the ingredients are problematic, whether tabdil mahiyat and metamorphosis takes place, and whether out of necessity you can even take it with the problematic ingredients. But it's not an issue of scholars, it's a medical issue. Respect every profession, stay in your lane. Don't overcomplicate issues. You don't want to take it, don't take it. You want to take it, then take advice from those people that you usually trust. Did all of our leaders go bankrupt overnight, morally bankrupt, that we no longer trust them now because of COVID-19? All the doctors that we trusted with much more complicated issues, now all of a sudden we want to doubt them because of, I'm a WhatsApp mufti, I'm a WhatsApp surgeon. The eighth of the 8 lessons that we need to take from this year, 2020, is that this year showed us the best of humanity and the worst of humanity. We saw the best of humanity during hard lockdown, when people dug deep into their pockets and made sure that those who live hand to mouth and who could not earn a living were fed. We saw the best of humanity when our doctors put their lives at risk every single day by treating those patients who were either positive or possibly positive. Imagine what happened through the mind of a doctor every day. He's got to go to his surgery and deal with hundreds of people. And he's going to come back home where his beloved wife and beloved children are at risk because of his work. Those people who are on the front line, nurses, paramedics, from our communities, those who were ready to make the ghusl of people who passed away from COVID-19, putting their own lives at risk and the lives of their families and loved ones at risk. COVID-19 in this year 2020 showed us the best of humanity, but it also showed us the worst of humanity. Corruption was not only in the government circles. How many Muslims were also involved in those corrupt tenders? It takes 2 to tango when it comes to corruption. Then, it showed the worst of our Muslim community in South Africa, because we had too much of time on hand, and because of pre-existing undercurrents and fault lines. This Muslim community, the only Muslim community in the world, turned on each other. We turned on each other in a savage way. The Muslim community split in an unprecedented way. We fragmented and we divided in a way that was unimaginable. The debates became so extreme. The titles of kafir and fasik and munafiq were thrown around like cheap toys. We displayed the worst of us, unsubstantiated allegations against respectable people. Even if you disagree with the person, you don't throw mud just because there's mud to be thrown. Pettiness. I went to one country town. The poor guys would say, Maulana, we put sanitizer there. One musalli, he saw it as a virtuous act to steal the sanitizer. I said, what? Is that the level of pettiness to which we degenerated in this year? In some masjids, people would go and pull the notices off because they had a different view. Intentionally go and gap in between those people who followed a justified ruling that allowed for spacing. Is that the level of pettiness to which we degenerated? And I speak to myself first, which for us to take lesson. It's not to pour fuel on wounds that I don't know have started to heal. What was so unfortunate in this country, that a masjid, which is supposed to be a place of unity, became a place of friction and fragmentation. What an indictment on all of us. It was heartbreaking that in some masjids people were resorting to vulgarities and resorting to physical violence over issues in which there was room for difference of opinion, over issues which are subsidiary in nature, which are not principal in nature. You see, when there were pre-existing problems that we never dealt with as a community, it became more acute and more pronounced. And this was something that happened only in South Africa. The world over, people rose beyond their divisions and they united to combat the virus. In South Africa, the virus split us like in no way that we could imagine. It brought us to a new low. But inshallah, from this new low, we will rise to a new high. The lesson to take from this, of course, the scholars have to take a major share of the responsibility. But it was not only scholars who fueled the fire, who forwarded the rubbish, who intensified the speculation, who perpetuated the debates. Each one of us needs to introspect and say, what could I have done better? Even if it meant I should have just kept quiet at certain times, what could I have done better? What lesson can I learn? You know, our fiqh is premised on the concept of zarurat and necessity. I ask you, any one of you, the oldest amongst you in this congregation, did you ever see a year of necessity more than this year? You're dealing with a novel virus. You cannot argue that you have to hold on to certain ideals, and if you don't hold, we're going to declare war on you. All of us grew up performing salah shoulder to shoulder. All of us grew up performing salah without the mask. Nobody enjoyed it. But this is not the best of situations. It's a situation of necessity. If you don't deem it a necessity, that's your opinion. But respect the opinion of others. Of course, there were those, and alhamdulillah, I must acknowledge our musallis here, that showed a great degree of tolerance. There were varying views, but alhamdulillah, we never had those issues. I'm talking general, throughout the country, that this was a period of necessity. We ought to have had tolerance to divergent viewpoints. We became more extreme in our responses than ever before. Let me conclude with these few thoughts. Look, we may have reached a new low. But Islam always says, Sahaba had reached a very difficult moment after Uhud. Because Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam told them, don't leave the mountain. They left the mountain. As a result, they snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. As a result, 70 Sahaba were martyred. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's uncle's body was mutilated. When they were walking back to Medina, they were still walking back to Medina. The physical wounds were fresh. The emotional wounds were worse. That what did we do? We messed up. We moved from the mountain. Allah said, وَلَا تَهِنُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا. Don't grieve. Don't become weak. وَأَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَ إِن كُنْتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. You will rise again if you become true Muslims. Come back to the true values of the deen. From this lowest of low, this Muslim community that has such talent, that has such capacity, that we are the envy of many majority Muslim countries in the world. We can rise, inshallah, from this low to the high that we have never enjoyed before. Let me conclude by saying, this year has taught us to appreciate what we have, not to obsess over what we don't have. I said the other day after Maghrib, if you have a job, consider yourself lucky. If you have good health, consider yourself lucky. How many young, fit people with no comorbidities dropped because of this virus? If you have a family, consider yourself lucky. How many people in one family were wiped out because of the pandemic? Prioritize the right things in your life. This is what the year has taught us. Work on your iman. Work on your spirituality. Let all of this bring you closer to Allah. Increase in the tawbah, in the istighfar, in the dua, in the sadaqah, in the charity. Develop emotional intelligence. We lack emotional intelligence. That's why we don't know how to manage our differences. We react, we don't respond. Emotional intelligence will teach you how to respond, not to react. Learn to keep silent. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, "Alayka bituli samti." Whilst silence is not always golden, but in the time when there's polarization in a community, silence is great. You don't have to get involved in every debate. Life is short, it's fragile. The only certainty is death. The only certainty is akhirah. The only constant is change. And this year has showed us that change can happen very suddenly and very abruptly. Let me leave you with these thoughts, brothers. Let this year 2020, let this COVID pandemic be a test that we passed and came closer to Allah. Not a test that we failed because we did not improve or we became worse. And from a test, it turns into a punishment. Use these holidays to reflect on this question, with which I will conclude. Have I become a better Muslim after all of this? Have we become better Muslims after all of this? If we have, then it was a test that we passed. If we haven't, then the second wave is not there for a second round of debates and pettiness. The second wave is a second knock on the door, a second opportunity to get our affairs in order, to take heed, to learn the lessons, and to become better Muslims, inshaAllah. May Allah grant me and all of us the tawfiq. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. I wasn't supposed to speak today, I spoke last week. And Maulana really insisted, and he doesn't take no for an answer. So whatever I said, if it's correct, it's from Allah. And if it's not correct, it's from me and from shaitan.